establish the primary dealer credit facility. Again, it's a 2008-era Federal Reserve facility that basically helps the primary dealers get funding in order to execute and smooth out the U.S. Treasury market. That market started to seize up and lock up. The Fed also brought back the commercial paper facility from 2008 to non-banks to help smooth out funding and dollar funding as companies try and small businesses try to get to meet their payrolls. Look at this story. The China government, they kicked out the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Washington Post from China. This as the president today called out China for cranking up its new propaganda campaign. China now trying to turn around the global outrage over its coronavirus outbreak that started in China late last year and has now put the world on the brink of a global recession. China trying instead to blame all that on the U.S. Here's the president today.
Well, China was putting out information which was false, that our military gave this to them. That was false. And rather than having an argument, I said, I have to call it where it came from. It did come from China. So I think it's a very accurate term. But no, I didn't appreciate the fact that China was saying that our military gave it to them. Our military did not give it to anybody.
And Secretary of State Michael Pompeo said the same. Watch.
The disinformation campaign that they are waging is designed to shift responsibility. Now's not the time for recrimination. Now's the time to solve this global pandemic. There will come a day when we will go evaluate how the entire world responded. That imposes a special responsibility to raise the flag, to say, we have a problem. This is different and unique and presents risk. And it took an awful long time for the world to become aware. The Chinese Communist Party had a responsibility to do this, not only for Americans and Italians and South Koreans and Iranians who are now suffering, but for their own people as well.
Let's get right to it with North Dakota Republican Senator Kevin Cramer. China and the U.S., that fight heating up. Your reaction to these new developments?
Well, first of all, Liz, I can't imagine why anybody would be surprised that the Chinese Communist government is less than transparent. And now that some transparency and some light's being shed onto them, that they respond by kicking out, the news media of all people out of their country. But it's a clear reminder to all of us of what we're dealing with when we're dealing with the Chinese in everything, including trade deals as well as the coronavirus.
Yeah, the Chinese government is saying that there are 5 news organizations, including the Xinhua news agency and China's global television network, that the State Department declared that they are foreign missions. Those entities in China, the media there is controlled by the U.S. government, is owned by the Chinese and Chinese state-backed enterprises. I'd like your reaction, Senator, to what Republican Jim Banks from Indiana told Fox News' Tucker Carlson should be done about China. Watch this.
We need to start by forcing China to pay the burden and the cost incurred on the United States of America because of due to the coronavirus. I think there are many ways that we can do that. The president could force China to relieve a great amount of American debt. He could institute tariffs on China and designate the funds from that into a coronavirus victim relief fund to pay the cost incurred on Americans and American taxpayers due to the negligence on China's behalf that's led to the crisis in America today.
Your reaction to that, sir?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I don't think there's any question, there shouldn't be anyway, any doubt that China deserves a great deal of the responsibility for what has happened, largely by their lack of transparency, their lack of setting up the flags, if you will, of warning to the rest of the world. They could have done themselves and the world a great favor had they been more forthcoming with information. That said, I don't know Representative Banks, but now might not be a great time to escalate tensions with China and say what the president ought to do in retaliating. Let's first fix the coronavirus global pandemic, do everything we can, of course, here in the United States, and then deal with China and other countries as we do a look back and a postmortem on this whole thing.
Yeah, because we're looking at now possible bailouts of the airline industry, the cruise industry. We're looking at auto dealers, students with their loan debts, auto loans. This is pretty extensive. The governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, today says that the outbreak is projected to peak in 45 days on May 1st. That tells you the market wants to know basically when the peak will happen, because we know in the 2003 SARS crisis, The markets bottomed out after the SARS crisis peaked, and then the market started to go back up when they got some sense of when this might be over. Your reaction?
Well, I don't mind telling you, Liz, I've been, even I have been sort of stunned at how emotional the stock market has been throughout this entire thing. I hope that it has found a floor. I mean, we can only hope at this point, but it seems to me that the markets always want information. The more good information you can provide the market, the better it responds. Obviously, uncertainty is the enemy of a successful market. But all of that said, we don't know these things. But this is why the president has been so aggressive, first of all, the early going with the travel ban from China and then other things since then, but then also with the guidelines that he's been signaling out to states and local communities and private industry in trying to flatten this curve by being very aggressive in exercising not just good hygiene, but social distancing and canceling a lot of events and gatherings. How successful we are at doing that will determine when this virus peaks. There are a lot of people that have a lot of opinions about it. I'm not nearly an expert enough to know what it might be, but I do have great confidence that this country can flatten this much sooner than 45 days if we all comply with the guidelines that are coming from really smart people.
All right. Sir, thank you so much. Senator Cramer, come back soon. Be safe. Next.